each of these. On the screen, I've highlighted in red the ones that, in my perspective, have increased the power of the national government. But we're going to work through all of these, and I'm going to ask you to I'm going to call on some people to explain why we might think that. And if you have a different perspective, feel free to share that up a little bit, because maybe there's just a different way of thinking about it. So with some of these, there's definitely a right answer, but some of them it might be open to interpretation. Okay? All right. So do we want to go in time order? Does that help? Okay. All right. So McCullough versus Maryland. Let's see who we're going to call on. We're going to call Mateo. So Mateo, tell me why McCullough versus Maryland strengthened the national government.
We said, the court case pretty much upheld the use of implied power, so it gave them the right to assert their power.
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Yep, perfect. First time we have. Then we'll go to Gibbons versus Ogden. Hunter, why would that strengthen the national government?
Because the Supreme Court upheld Congress's authority to regulate interstate commerce.
Okay. And so they upheld their authority to regulate interstate commerce. And what do you think, in Gibbons versus Ogden, what did they do to that concept of interstate commerce, do you think? How did they impact the definition of interstate commerce?
Probably expanded it.
Okay. If you didn't hear what Hunter said, he said probably expanded it, which I would 100% agree. So when you think of commerce, a lot of times you think of, okay, Hannah's over here, and I'm over here, and I'm selling her something, she's giving me money, and we have some kind of financial exchange. In Gibbons versus Ogden, they're going to broaden what we think of commerce, and they're going to say, if there's general business activity going on there, Congress has a right to regulate it, because we have a right to regulate business that goes over the states. So for Congress, this is woohoo! We have an opportunity here to start to regulate things, which they're going to take it as a huge, huge light. Okay, all right, what do we got next on our list? We've got, I guess, the Reconstruction Era, right? Is that what's next on there? Tell me, Bailey, how did the Reconstruction Era, how did that strengthen the national government?
Well, we said that, because the northern political leaders, right, they were trying to help the South, kind of unite the government once again. And so we were kind of iffy about that, but we definitely didn't think it was, lower the power.
Okay. When we say Reconstruction, what do you think of, Bailey?
Remake the government.
Do you remember some specific things we did, though, with Reconstruction? The citizens vote.
Yeah.
Right? What am I getting at, you guys? The amendments, right? 13, 14, 15. So right there, if you're going to amend the Constitution and tell a state that they have to do something that they didn't have to used to do, that's asserting national power. Plus, you're going to go in and fundamentally try to change the way of life for the South. All right, then we have Progressive Era regulations. Abdul, why would that strengthen the national government?
I think the national government put in regulations on factories and create income taxes and election of senators.
Awesome. All of that stuff is true. The income tax, direct election of senators, regulating factories, worker protections, and plus, remember, there was a lot of election reform as well, so they're telling states what to do. Tushara. I sure did. Thank you so much. Okay, so Dred Scott is not a huge one. I should have highlighted it. So I do think that Dred Scott strengthened the power of the national government. Because in my mind, basically what they're ruling is they're asserting the power of the Supreme Court to rule on citizenship and who's a citizen and who has a right. Could anybody say the other way though? Because you could make an argument for that it didn't strengthen the national government. What do you think?
Didn't it de-legitified and very compromised so that the federal government didn't have power over southern states?
And that totally, yeah. I think it's to me that would just be open to how you would explain it. So I wouldn't stress too much about that one. Okay, so we did that. We did Progressive Era. Now we should go to New Deal legislation. Katie Harmon, why would that strengthen the national government? Okay, so let's talk through this a little bit. So you took U.S. history last year and you spent a ton of time studying the New Deal. What do you remember about do you remember anything about the New Deal? That was like when you guys studied FDR and Social Security and all those agencies you had to memorize, that alphabet soup, okay? So when they were doing that, what were they trying to do with New Deal laws? What, you want to phone a friend? You totally can. Yes? Okay. All right, Gage, help her out.
Well, we were finding all those, like, the national, labor regulations, National Youth Administration, Social Security. That's the government, like, putting regulations on everybody in all states.
Yep, absolutely, saying this is what you're going to do. And that's kind of what I was saying earlier, a good rule of thumb. If you create a national agency for something and a program for all states, it's going to strengthen the power of the national government. This is like a massive turning point for that. Okay, what do we got after New Deal? We've got Heart of Atlanta Motel, okay? Ari, you want to tell us why?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Well, that was the one about the discrimination,
Yes.
and basically they were saying how that interstate commerce, the government has to say that discrimination is not okay.
Okay, good. All right, and then we've got, what's next on your list? You've got war and poverty? Okay, tell me, Mitchell, why did the war and poverty strengthen the power of the national government?
So, the government, put programs in, I guess, to help, they helped by putting in job training and, job placement.
Mm-hmm.
So that in turn, I guess, strengthens their, power over the states because they're the one that implements the program.
Absolutely, because it's a lot of social programs, which is the province of the state. I heard an interview with LBJ, and he talked about, he said, it's not okay that in one state you have poverty and you have bad education, and in another state you have education and you have less poverty. And in his argument, like, who cares whose power it is? We're going to fix this problem. And if the states aren't getting it done, the national government's going to step in and do it. All right, so then we're going to have some big pushback, though, and we're going to kind of go through a pretty long time period. We're going to look at devolution and a return of power to the states. And then more recently we have progressive federalism on there first. So Shelby, will you explain what y'all said about progressive federalism, because I kind of like that.
Okay, so we said progressive federalism was an increase in federal power in that after the devolution period, they had more federal power than they had before, but since it was sort of making it equal between states and federal, it wasn't a big jump in power.
Good. Good. That makes sense. So it's just kind of like the 80s was such a massive pushback, and progressive federalism is probably more practical. It's less ideologically driven about, well, this is what the Constitution says, and it's more about, okay, sometimes we're going to work together, sometimes we're going to stay out of your way, and sometimes the national government's just going to tell the states what to do. So it's just I just think it's a more practical approach. And then finally with Arizona to U.S., John, can you tell us why that strengthened the power of the national government?
I think it basically said, like, if the state and the national government disagree on an issue, the national government's going to trump them.
Very good. So it's like a support of that supremacy clause, but only specifically if, like, they're acting in their rightful authority. And while the state government has some kind of obligation to take care of citizens, they're not in charge of immigration policy. And that's kind of the big thing, is it's the national government's job. Okay, so next thing we want to do then is we want to look at this notion of fiscal federalism. Rebecca, will you read the definition of fiscal federalism for us, please?
Pattern of taxing and spending by the national government in relation to the state.
That word, fiscal federalism, did y'all encounter that reading? Okay. I'm going to give you a little bit of an analogy to try to kind of understand fiscal federalism. Okay, so let's say that Janie's parents, they're really excited about college. They've been waiting all this time. And they are alumni from University of Texas. Okay, anyway, we'll just pretend if that's not okay. All right, so they went to University of Texas, and it's super, super important to them that Janie gets to go to UT. So all these years, room's been burnt orange, like the whole bit, like they've just been waiting, and she gets the decision, and she gets accepted, okay? And they sit her down and they say, because you got into UT, and that's where we really want you to go, we will pay 100% for everything, all the way through grad school. Congratulations, okay? But Janie's sitting there, and she says, you know what? As much as I like that, and I appreciate the money, I don't really want to go to UT. I want to go to OU instead. Okay?
That's so weird.
All right, is that really true?
Yes, I'm good.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so she says that, and they immediately say, then the money's gone. Okay?
Go to UT.
Don't go
Go to UT.
Okay.
UT.
That is fiscal federalism. Fiscal federalism is when the parent or the national government uses the resources they have to try to control the states in an area where they don't have an ability to set that policy. Fundamental, it's bribing. Absolutely, that's a good way of looking at it. Now, there's different levels of it. There's some that's real controlling. There's some that is, we just want you, because Janie's parents could say something else. They could say, well, we just want you to go to college. So here's money, go. Do with it what you will. There's some that would say, you must go to UT, you must major in civil engineering, you must maintain a 3.8, and our national government has all those kind of programs as well. They have some that are very free, they have some that are kind of controlling, and then they have some that are super, super controlling and really binding of what the states do. But the reason they do it is because Janie has free will. She can go to college where she wants. Like, your parents can't physically stop you from going somewhere, right? But they probably have more financial resources than you do, and so that's their opportunity to try to control you, okay? All right, so we got to think about how dual federalism then and cooperative federalism are going to fit in with this idea, okay? So remind me, Patrick, what is dual federalism? Well, can you just tell me the difference in dual federalism and cooperative federalism?
Yeah, cooperative federalism is more of like they're working together to solve problems, and duals, they have their own powers to do everything.
Good, awesome. And so the analogy that we used last class, that dual federalism is like the layer cake, where I can look at a problem and I can look at the piece of cake and I can see very clearly the layers. With cooperative federalism, it's just not so clear. You can't really ever get a bite of just white or chocolate. You know, it's the bottom of the Neapolitan where they've kind of all like melted together and no longer can you get just the one flavor. So because we live in this era of cooperative federalism, where we have many levels of government that are often pooling their resources to solve a problem, fiscal federalism has become a really interesting arrangement because the national government just tends to have those resources, and so then they can use that in that process of trying to work together. Okay? And so we're going to work through and look at a whole bunch of examples. Okay? All right, so here's what I want you to do. We've got several questions and some things you're going to fit into your timeline, and we will go back and check this. Okay? So all of these questions, you're going to look at where cooperative federalism is going to fit into that timeline. Like, when do you think we start doing that and why? Then we want to do the same thing for the different kind of grants. And so really, I want you guys to take probably from here till lunch to just talk through all of this stuff and see if you can think of where it fits. And then after lunch, we'll go over it, and I'll talk through it with you and make sure you understand. Okay? So you got 10 minutes to kind of answer and address all of this stuff.